It's good to see everyone. Getting a little colder again. It's getting cold, hot, cold, hot. But it was a good. I guess nonetheless, it's a good week. October is for me. It's like October seems to be kind of one of those months that is kind of, would you say, kind of down month, I guess. Like the leaves are falling and things are just kind of get colder outside. But hey, that does not matter. Those circumstances shouldn't change how you feel and how you should live your life for Christ. Because as I believe, and I hope that you guys believe too, living your life for Christ, there's an excitement, there's a joy, there's a peace, there's this motivation should be in your heart to live your life for Christ. This week, some of you I talked to this morning probably thought that I was angry at you. Yeah, I was kind of. I'm just joking. I'm not angry. But some of you tried to text me and couldn't get through to me, or probably called me and I went straight to voicemail probably. My phone broke in the beginning of the week. I sat down and no, I never do this. Okay, I never do this because I think it's more for females than guys. But I never put my phone in my back pocket. I put my phone in my back pocket for some reason. And I forgot I had it in there. And then I sat on a metal chair. Yeah. And then I got up to make a phone call and I noticed my LCD screen is cracked. And what sucks about that is that just like 5 days ago, before that, I called Verizon and said, I need to save $10. Could you get my insurance off? So I actually took my insurance. Yeah. So I took my insurance off and that happened 5 days later and it cracked and it just kind of like, I'm sitting there and just like, oh my goodness. And I'm using my daughter's phone, I'm using my son's phone. But God is good because I was going to call her up. Thank you, Linda. She said she has an extra phone for me, so. But that's good. I found out today that she's going to give me a phone, which that phone I could take and I can trade it into something else. Not to say that your phone is bad. I just, there's a phone, that I can probably trade into. But this whole week, that's what I've been kind of struggling with. I've been calling I called Verizon and I said, listen, I've been it's been 14 years I've been with Verizon. I said, I've been with you for 14 years. Can't you do something for me? Can't you? And I cracked my phone and I just got rid of my insurance. And they're trying to work with me. They're trying to work with me and they're telling me all these different options that I could do. But every time I think about that option that they tell me, it's not working. It keeps being denied. So the only thing is I have to wait for 1 month. I had to wait for my daughter's upgrade, which is November 19th. Only then can some of these things that I was thinking of happen. So I thought to myself, all right, I'll just live without a phone for a month. How bad could it be? In fact, these last couple of days, it's been kind of nice. Right? Because, not to say that you guys bothered me, you don't. But having no phone, it's pretty good because, it's not like I don't get annoying collection calls. I don't get these advertising calls, whatever. And the thing is, I don't really check Facebook as much as I do, or check on my social media as I do. And I kind of wonder, and it just kind of hit me today. I was sitting back, praising back there, and just thinking about the whole week and today's message. How God is a very fun God. He loves to get your attention. He loves to do these things so that you're like, oh man, because think about it. When Jesus was here on the earth, when he was here and he was preaching and he was giving the message, a lot of his things that he said were stories, parables. In fact, 70% of his messages were stories. Because why? Because people can relate to these stories. People can understand these stories. If Jesus just flat out just started preaching theologically, people were like, what in the world is he talking about? But he talked in stories, he talked about parables. A lot of people get it. And I think sometimes that's how God does this for us, that he gives you circumstances so that you can think, oh, I get it. So I feel like every time I prepare a sermon, somehow God, in the beginning of the week, does something that I kind of say at the end, oh, this is the reason. Because sometimes, you have to go through this experience to understand the value behind it. And what I want to talk to you about today is, as we end, I know 2 weeks ago, I said we're going to end with 1 John chapter 5. But there's actually one more verse that I wanted to tackle. And it's the last verse. It's the last verse in 1 John chapter 5, verse 21. So if you have your Bibles, turn to 1 John chapter 5, verse 21. 1 John chapter 5, verse 21. It's just one simple statement. So, before I read this verse, I just want to kind of summarize everything that we just spent like the last couple months about 1 John, and we see how John was writing to his people in Ephesus, and how, as an older man, as an elderly man, he's kind of directing his attention to his flock, to his members of the church, and all the people that he's accounted with. And he said several times throughout this chapters, he says, dear children. And it's kind of only fitting that the last verse, the last thing that he writes out on this verse is saying, dear children again. It's like one of these things when you write a letter and you say, sincerely, or yours truly, or love, or your best friend. This is sort of like what he's doing here. He's saying, dear children, and he's writing this thing that's saying, this is the conclusion of this is my signature, this is my stamp of approval, saying this is the last thing that I want you to know. And he says they're dear children, and we can see, like I said, how intimate, how tenderly, and how loving John was trying to portray to his readers. And he goes on to say this, dear children, keep yourselves from idols. Dear children, keep yourselves from idols. That's his last statement. That's his closing statement in his letter. Dear children, keep yourself from idols. So he just spends the entire 5 chapters in 1 John about being fellowship in the light. And when you don't have fellowship in the light, then you're not part of Christ. You got to be walking in the light. He just spends a whole another chapter about saying you got to love one another. You got to, love each other with brotherly love. And he spends another chapter talking about how God is love. And he's spending all these different things. He never once mentions anything bad until I get to this one point right here. The very last thing of his letter, dear children, keep yourselves from idols. Keep yourselves from idols. I don't think I have to go too much into depth and understanding of what idol is, but when my phone broke the first day, I was furious. I was angry. Because I did everything with that phone. I did everything, like mail, email, social media, talking, texting. There's so many things I did with that phone. And we spend a lot of times when we come back from mission trips, and what do we say? We're like, man, it's so awesome at mission trips because, why? We're away from our technology. We're away from these calls. We're away from a lot of things. So what is the difference? What is it going on between over there and over here? Why is it that we feel so peaceful there and we just get bombarded over here? It's because we idolize these things. We idolize these things that we have. We idolize simple things like the phone. When you look at that phone, I was idolizing that phone. Everything was so important to me. And I think God broke it on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. He broke it. So that I can understand this whole week what it meant to idolize things. Because there is in my life that I do idolize a lot of things. What is an idol? In the original text in the Greek, it's a word that we say, idolon. And basically, idolon is an image or a likeness or a thing that replaces the only true and living God in your heart. In fact, the word idols many times are translated into Hebrew words too. There are a lot of Hebrew words that translate the word idol. In fact, one of them says Hebrew word avin, which is equals to what means emptiness, nothingness, vain, false, wicked thing. Another Hebrew word for idol is ima, which is an object of horror or terror. You can see that in Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 38. There's another Hebrew word, Eli, which is a thing of not and not entity. You see, there's so many words that in the Bible, translation of idol, basically it's saying that everything that you do and you worship instead of worshiping God. But we can see in the Bible times often that you see them, they make idols out of wood, metal, stone, and they present that as their gods. Christian author Beth Moore says, anything we try to put in place where God belongs is an idol. Anything that you place in front of God is an idol. In other words, anything in this life apart from Christ is an idol. In short, an idol is a lifeless, useless substitute for the real thing. Lifeless, useless substitute for the real thing. When I was in Korea a couple years ago, I know Healy over there just got back from Korea. I was in Korea, and Korea is known for knockoffs. They're known for knockoffs. I mean, like, you can go there and you can go to like the local market, and it'll look like just like Nike. I mean, just like Nike, like to all the way to the, like the design. And you're like, oh man, this is Nike. And you're like, oh, but you gotta look closely because sometimes the trademarks, there might be something a little off. Like, Nike's like this. It's like a little curve. There's like a check mark. You're like, what in the world, And then, no joke, I went to a mall and I saw, like right next to it was like North Face. Oh, this is cool, North Face. And right next to North Face was South Face. That's what South Face. I remember I looked at it, but it was a lot cheaper. It was a lot cheaper than the name brand. So what I'm trying to say is that there's no substitute for the real thing. All right, there's no substitute for the real thing. We might think that it's a substitute, but it only is short-lived. It doesn't bring you the full satisfaction. It doesn't bring you the full peace. It doesn't bring you the full joy in your life. Only Christ can. Only the real thing can. Idolatry is a sin of sins. You see, in fact, when you look over through the history, idolatry is the one that caused Satan to fall from heaven. He idolized. He wanted to become God. And that's why he fell from heaven. Idolatry caused Adam to question and disobey God in the Garden of Eden. It was idolatry that caused Cain to murder his brother Abel. It was idolatry that caused the first generation of Israel to be wandering around the desert for 40 years. It was idolatry that the succeeding generation was exiled from their lands and from their families. In fact, the English language of idolatry starts with the letter what? I. You see, the idolater is the person who elevates himself into the position of God while he lowers God to the position of man. And this is what John is speaking right here. He's saying, little children, keep yourself from idols. Why was he writing this? Why was it so important to leave it at the end of the letter? Why not put it in the beginning? Why not put it in the middle? Why did he put it at the end? Because he wanted his readers to know the oppositions that they were facing at their time. You see, this letter was written in the city of Ephesus, in modern-day Turkey. In fact, we have a brother from Turkey. That's awesome, right over there. So I'm glad that you're here. I'll get your name. Because you said your name, but I couldn't remember your name. It's a very, so anyways. but it's Ephesus. It's the modern-day Turkey. And they built what is one of the 7 wonders of the world, which is the Temple of Diana. Right? And some of you might see it in the picture if you go to Google stuff. It's that big Pythagorean kind of looking building. It's like very long and had a lot of poles and stuff. The reason why I know this is because my kids in middle school had to make a structure on one of these for art class, and I helped them. But the Temple of Diana was there, and obviously it was a false god that they worshiped. In fact, the occupation of the people there, it was very popular, was making and selling idols. So even the people at the church were working in places where they were selling idols and making false gods and making false things so people can buy these things and worship these things. So John is saying to them, listen, keep yourselves from idols. Little children. Now he's not demeaning when he's saying little children. He's not saying, oh, you little children, you're immature Christians, or you whatever. He's not saying that. When he's saying little children, he's saying with his most compassionate heart, he's saying, my dear child, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ, if there's anything that you don't get out of the letter that I wrote, listen to this last statement. Keep yourself from idols. You see, in America today, our idols are not carved out of stone or wood or metal, but they're more basically formed in our hearts. Some type of idols that we might think of. Idol things tends to be things that our lives revolve around. Think for a moment, what kind of things does your life revolve around? Idols can be things that we fear, where we enjoy the most. Idols can be the things that we serve. Idols can be things that control lives more than God. Idols can be the things that we love more than God. Idols can be times that we spend more money on. You spend a lot of things on things materialistically instead of getting things of God and His kingdom. Idols can be things that give our lives the most meaning, or gives us or things that capture our attention and our affection. Kind of more broad or more specific, maybe idols can be money and things in your life. Are you driven to make money? Are you driven to do things? Are you greedy that you do not use the money that God has blessed you with? Or things that you have, like I said, my phone. It could be a girlfriend or boyfriend that you idolize, that you look up to, or you spend more time with, and you drown yourself ridiculously in their eyes, and just spend so much time with a boyfriend and girlfriend. In fact, I'm telling you right now, I believe that when you date, you got to date to marry. You don't date to mess around. Courtship. There's a difference between dating and courtship. But do you, in your relationship, look at the other person and spend more time with that person than you do with God? It can be your parents. It can be education. It can be pleasure. It can be pleasure. I know snowboarding is coming around the corner, and all you guys are all excited for snowboarding. That's fine. I'm not here to say don't do anything. I'm not saying that you can't have pleasures. I'm not saying that you can't have fun. But is it clouding your heart from God? Is going to snowboarding more important than going to a retreat? Is snowboarding more important that you can miss a Sunday or two because you want to go snowboarding? That's when it becomes an idolatry. That's where it becomes an idol. Fame, even being a leader, a boss, or a manager, your job, your career, all these things can be an idol in your life. You see, Adrian Rogers said this: if you are saved, you will have a desire to be holy, a hunger for the Word, the inner witness of the Spirit, and a desire to share Jesus. These are the birthmarks of the believer. You see, when we get saved, we hunger for the Word of God. We hunger for the things of God. Because it's not something that we just inherit. We inherit God, but we also inherit a relationship with God. We begin a relationship with God. I think Satan does so many things today, and so many schemes, and clouds us with so much things in front of us, that idols keep lost people from being saved, and keep saved people from living as if they were lost. This is what Satan does with idols. It keeps the lost people from being saved, and keeps the saved from living like the lost. Why is it so important? Why is John telling us little children? He's saying that because idolatry will rob your blessings from God. Idolatry will rob God and the things that He has in store for you, and that will all be robbed away. It robs God out of our hearts. What is the price that we pay? What is the price that we pay? Look at Jonah 2:8. Jonah 2:8, in the mouth of the fish. This is what he said. This is his quote. He says, Jonah 2:8, it says, those who cling to worthless idols forfeit the grace that could be theirs. Jonah says, those who cling to worthless idols forfeit the grace that could be theirs. When we cling onto things and idols in our lives, the idols will eventually rob you of the blessings of God. You see, when we don't let go and we continue to live that, we will hurt ourselves and those that are around us. We got to learn to let it go. We got to, if God is calling it, you got to say, God, it's yours in the first place, and let it go. And I had an illustration. I forgot to bring it because I was kind of busy, but I wish I had it with me. But there's an illustration of a little boy went and found this vase that the mother had for years. It was an antique vase. And for somehow this boy's hand got stuck in it. And the mother came and she was a little angry and she was trying to pull it out. And she's thinking all these things that she could do without breaking the vase. And the boy's like, it hurts. And mom's just getting sweating, hoping that you don't break it. She started putting Vaseline all over his wrist and oil and all this thing, but it still wasn't lifting up. And finally her mother noticed something. And she asked the boy, are you holding your fist? And he said, yes, Mom, I am. She goes, why are you holding your fist? And he goes, because I do not want to let go of my quarter that was in my wrist. Sometimes we hang on to things too much that eventually will hurt others, or eventually will tend to break things that are important in our lives. You see, we need to let it go. See, John goes on, he says, dear little children, he goes, keep yourselves. To keep yourselves in the Greek is pronounced phulasso. And what that means is to post a guard over, to carefully watch for. Right? When John says to keep yourself, he's saying to be on guard. Watch out. These things will creep into your life. These things will be presented in your life. So we must be in guard. Keep yourself. Be on guard. Watch over yourself. Because idolatry will come like a thief, like an enemy willing to come to destroy your life. When God called Abraham to leave the ancient city of Babylon, Ur, the Lord promised Abraham a promise that he would be in an appropriate time, he would give him a son, and that he would become a great nation. Abraham believed and had faith, through faith, walked out, left his city that he was in, and pursued to where God was going to lead him. God didn't tell him, this is the place I'm going to send you. God didn't say, this is where you go. God didn't say the next point of location is here. No, he said, come, pick up your stuff, and go. And it's not like Abraham just had him and his wife. He had a whole herd, he had a whole servant. He was a rich man. He was pretty wealthy. So he had a lot of goats and sheep and a lot of cows, whatever they might say. It was not just a one-day thing. It probably took months for them to finally get off and move. And on the way there, it took them so many years to finally, at the age of 100, Abraham, and the age of 99 for Sarah, that they have a child named Isaac. Let me tell you, God promised Abraham you're going to have a son. One son from Sarah. He had that son. Can you imagine the joy? Can you imagine the joy Abraham felt? Can you imagine that every day he's sitting out in this tent watching Isaac grow up? Right now we have little babies in it right now. We have we have all these babies are running around. Some of you just had newborn. It's a joy to see your baby grow up. There's something. I mean, you can. I can guarantee you, every parent, when a baby is born, when a baby is growing, you can sit hours on a couch and just watch your kid. You can't. Right? And you just in yourself, you're like, man, this is beautiful. Man, this is wonderful. Man, you just kind of wonder, like, how in the world that I made like a creation out of this. You kind of just like, oh, he has my eye, he has my nose. You're just so proud of him. You're just so proud of her. You just are just like, when they're just growing up, you're just so enticed in them, and you're so full of just happiness for them. I can guarantee you, I really do feel that Abraham had a little idolatry in worshiping Isaac. He's saying, this is my son. This is my son who God promised that will become a great nation. Through my son Isaac, my seed will become great. I'm sure there was an idolatry. I'm sure there was something that was creeping up in Abraham's heart. I'm sure there was something that was in Abraham's heart saying that I'm a proud dad. This is the kind of kid that I have. And God goes, Abraham, after about 12 years later, Abraham, yes, God, go and sacrifice your son. Go and sacrifice your son. Go and burn him and send it to me as an offering. You know, when the Bible says burnt offering, sacrifice, it meant that he had to cut. They had to cut animals into pieces. They had to slice their throat, they had to slice their body part, and they had to burn it. So when God says, sacrifice your son, Abraham, I'm wondering that heart of this. I'm sure he was idolizing his son for a bit. But what did Abraham do? He said, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. I will. Without ever arguing, without ever complaining, without ever debating, he just simply said, yes, Lord. I'll do it. So what does the Bible say? The next morning, it wasn't like when a week later, it wasn't a month later, it wasn't when he was tossing and turning, he was like, okay, I gotta do it, I gotta do it. The next day, he got up, told his servants, get some donkeys and we're gonna head out to Mount Moriah. And then when they went there, Mount Moriah. And they went there, they told, Abraham took his son Isaac and told his servant, this is the exact words in the Bible, he said, get the donkeys ready, because we're going to go and offer a sacrifice to God, and both of us will come back. That's what Abraham said. He said, when we go up there and we're going to give the offering, both of us will come back. And some of you know the story. They went up to the mountain, and Abraham started to gather sticks and gather all these different things. And he gathered and he made an altar. And can you imagine? I'm sure Isaac knew what was going on. He was like a teenager. He was not like a little 7 or 6-year-old boy. He was kind of a little older. I'm sure he knew what he was doing. Dad, where's the lamb? And what did Abraham say? Why? Okay. Like 10 minutes later, Dad, I still see no lamb. And Abraham was like, son, you are the lamb. Can you imagine Isaac's? You see, the Bible doesn't say that he said that. The Bible actually said that Abraham took Isaac and bound him and tied him up to the altar. I don't know about you. I don't know who had more faith, Abraham or Isaac. We don't hear Isaac's story. We don't hear what transpires in Isaac's mind. But if I'm a 12-year-old boy and my dad's about to kill me, I'm going to scream. I'm going to be like, no, what are you doing? You know, I'm trying to knock some sense into him. Dad, what are you doing? I'm supposed to be the chosen one or something. I don't know what it is. But can you imagine just the tension, the scenario that's going on? And the Bible went as far as say that Abraham actually lifted up the dagger and was in the form about to stab him. And then God calls out, wait! Don't do it. He got to that point where Abraham lifted up his knife. I don't know about you, but if it was me, I'll be kind of delaying a little bit. When you couldn't find more sticks and then man, I can't find the rope. You seen the rope? You know, I always try to delay as much as I can, but no. Abraham, boom, 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 and he lifted up that knife, and he was about to strike it, no hesitation. Because Abraham had faith. You know what the faith was? Abraham had faith that even if he killed his own son, even if he had to kill his son, that God had the power to raise him up. That's the faith of God. That's the faith that Abraham had. He knew that even if I had to go through this and kill my son, that somehow, some way, maybe through another son, or maybe through Isaac, even if he had to burn his ashes, Abraham had a faith that God would do the right thing. And that's what God did. He gave another lamb to be the sacrifice. You see, that forth, Abraham grew that much closer to God. You see, God is the one who gave Abraham his son. When we look around and everything that you have, God is the provider. God is the one who gave it to you. God is the one who has given you the clothes. God is the one who has given you your job. God has given you the education that you're in. God has given you the things that you do from this life. God has given it to you. It's all God's if you think about it. And if it's all God's, what do you think God had the purpose and intention for? Did God give you these things so that you could idolize it? Did God give you such a phone for you to idolize it? Did God give you a boyfriend or girlfriend? Did God give you a husband or wife? Did God give you children? Did God give you a job? Did God give you clothes, did God give you food, whatever you did, did God give those things for you to idolize? He gave those things to you so that you can glorify God, and that whatever He's given you, that you can do it to glorify His name even further. So if He's giving you the money, He's giving you the job, He's giving you the position, He's giving you the brains, He's giving you the smarts, He's giving you all these different things, you've got to use it for the glory of God. You've got to use it for His kingdom. You got to use it to reach lost souls. You got to use it to further enhance the church. You got to use it to do it for the overall picture of brothers and sisters in Christ, each other, fulfilling God's plan. You see, when we who are God's obey God, we will be blessed. But when we begin to worship and serve the blessing instead of the blesser, when we start to worship the created instead of the creator, when we start to worship the given instead of the giver, we will not prosper. We will not prosper. Life apart from a loving relationship with God equals nothing. Life with a false God is a false life. When we look at it, God loves us so much, and He's given us so much. He wants to be that provider. He wants Him to be praised. Our God is a jealous God. In fact, that's what Exodus chapter 20 says, isn't it? In fact, that's the next thing that I want to kind of talk to you about, is that when we look at the Ten Commandments, the first 3 commandments that were given, Exodus chapter 20, verse 2, it says, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. This is where he begins his 10 commandments. Thou shalt not have other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee a graven image or anything likeness of anything that is in heaven or above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down to thyself to them, nor serve them, for I am the Lord thy God, and a jealous God. And then there's other 7 more commandments that he follows by. But the first 3 commandments that he has given his people. The first commandment tells us who to worship. The second commandment tells us what not to worship. The third commandment tells us how to worship. Have you ever wondered why the first 3 commandments were not simply something like thou shalt not murder or thou shalt not commit adultery? Why weren't those things up front? Why was it you should have no other gods before you? You should honor my name. You should bow down to no one but the Lord. Why is those the first 3? Because he knew that those first 3 must be working in our lives, and then the other things will come follow. You see, you can't just say that, you can't live a life that says, I'm not going to murder, without really knowing who God is. Does that make sense? You've got to know God, because God's life will fill you so that you will not do those things. Without God first, your morality will lose sight. You will become a person that is not living a life for God. We must live for God, then our desires become His desires. But when we live our lives for idols, then our desires become our master. It becomes those things that you desire, those things that you crave, those things that you have, that becomes your master. And this is what John is saying. Idolatry is dangerous, but very subtle. When you look at everything here, even people in the Christian, even brothers and sisters in Christ, we see a lot of churches fight. We see churches that break up because they can't agree on a building. But do we really want to idolize the building, or are we here to worship God? I think a lot of people worship too many things. C.H. Spurgeon, I end with this. C.H. Spurgeon, one of the great preachers, said this. It's kind of harsh if you read it. If you think about it, it's kind of harsh. Listen to what he says. He says, make no idol of your child or your wife or your husband, for putting them in Christ's place, you really provoke him to take them from you. Love them as much as you please. I would that some love their children, their husband, or their wives more than they do. But always love them in such a fashion that Christ shall have the first place in your heart. I think a lot of us put things before Christ. Christ needs to be number one in your heart. There's a pastor here. He's 96 years old, 95 or 96. He's still at Liberty. He's married again. I think I mentioned this before. He married the second time because his first wife passed away. He was 80 years old and he married a 60-year-old. That's amazing. 80-year-old married a 60-year-old. That's amazing. But he always tells us his first marriage, when he first got married to his wife. At the wedding, when the pastor says all the vows and everything, Pastor Kim, Dr. Kim, said this to his wife. You will always be my second wife. It's kind of like in the wedding. He said it to him. He said it to everybody listening. You will always be my second wife, because my first love belongs to Christ. And that's something that's been hard. I mean, it's hard to do that, especially me as a family man, my wife and 2 kids. It's easy for me to idolize. It's easy for me to idolize to them. Sometimes, I admit, I think I fall into that sin. And sometimes I idolize because there's so many things that I feel like God has given talents to my son and my daughter. And that's why I post it on Facebook. You know? That in that form, that could be an idolization too. And I have to apologize. But the thing is, what we need to be careful of, those things can be good. Those things can be great. But what is the motive behind it? Are you training yourself to be successful and using it to gain more feeling, getting yourself to be more recognized? Or are you doing those things so that God can be recognized? Are you using the things that God has given you to give Him glory? And that's what we need to be careful of. And that's what I think John tells us here. Dear children, keep yourselves from idols. Keep yourselves from idols. I know a lot of us worship something here. Because we've all been created to worship something. If we're not worshiping God, we're worshiping something. Because we're created to worship. We've been created to worship. So hopefully that you be worshiping God and not something else. That will be useless, and that will be bringing no satisfaction, that will eventually just be done. Worship your God. Let's pray.